Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Turnbuckles, Trunks, and Titles. Now, I'm Nick, and y'all know me. I'm Nick. I'm here every week. And my partner in crime, the other man who's here every week, he just happens to be the man of the hour, the man with the power. He's working hard, collecting some Benjamins. They call him Cueball Carmichael. Q, how are you tonight, my friend?
Hey, Nick, how are you again on Tuesday nights that came around extremely fast?
You know what? I'm great, buddy. Happy to have you on. Do not adjust your YouTube channel or wherever you guys are. I know it says TruthBusters Live, but as you guys are piling in, I can see the numbers rising. You must know you got the right program because it's Tuesday night, and it can only be one Tuesday night, and it's got to be Turnbuckles, Trunks, and Titles. So, first of all, Q, last week's show was a hit. A lot of people seem to dig it. We are giving some content, what the people want, and you and I are delivering it.
Yeah, we're really lucky. We got a lot of people that follow the show that are loyalists, and we appreciate that. You know, Anthony's on every week and always got questions, and we just got a good group of people watching the show. So we're real happy with that, man. We got some real dedicated followers. Rick led down here in Tennessee, so it's hey, we got a good group of people out there. And if I missed you and you watch every week, I apologize. I'm driving down Interstate 40 coming back from work. I had a 2-hour drive in front of me, and about 45 minutes in, it was time for the show to start. So I'm mobile. If you had trouble seeing me, I apologize. I'm driving rather quick on the I-40 interstate in North Carolina with the dome light on, so hopefully you can see me a little bit.
Hey, we can see you, no problem, brother. Don't you worry about that. Now, tonight's show is special for many reasons. This show is credited for more than just the infamous Stone Cold Stunner to Vince McMahon. This is a night that Cactus Jack returned, all sorts of stuff. Pillman had Marlena with them. We're going to cover some of that. There's so much meat on the bone here that we need to get to, but it's only fitting that we would start with that Saturday night, which just happened to be one night only in Birmingham, England. Most famous for the night that Shawn Michaels would end up beating the British Bulldog in what some said was the biggest screw up to do that to Davey, being that he was the Hulk Hogan of the United Kingdom. And I'm just curious, from your standpoint, is that a fair criticism? Would you consider him the Hulk Hogan of the United Kingdom?
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Davey Boy, one of the British Bulldogs, man, are you kidding me? He's royalty in England. So, it seemed like it was like, it just seemed like Vince was into screwing people at the time. He screwed Brett. We talked about that. And then he takes the show to England, and he puts somebody over on Davey Boy in his own country. And I just really didn't agree with it. I don't know, maybe because I'm a hardcore loyal. Maybe because I'm up there at WWE, but it was WWF, and they were good guys, and to me it was like, wow, really? You got to do it there? You couldn't do it over here?
Well, and it's funny because one of the things that I want to talk to you about, and the reason why I want to start with Saturday night's one night only, was because of a certain championship belt called the European Champion. And for some people, it was literally a prop. For other people, the belt had meaning. And when I say meaning, you think of NXT, the UK championship, but it's a different era now.
Right.
The belts have a different meaning compared to then. I always say that the World Championship meant more in the 90s than it certainly does today. But does the NXT UK Championship maybe have a little more prestige behind it? Where would you rank the European Championship in your mind today?
Well, in my mind, it was in the top three titles. I mean, I believe, I think your tag team titles are totally different, but I think in Europe it meant a lot to the people, and it meant a lot to the people to have a champion who was from there, and so I think the belt to me had a lot of prestige. And I maybe again because I'm a loyalist, but when you go overseas and you go to Europe and you wrestle, they were still packing buildings over there. When they were drawing, 8,000 and 20,000 seat building here, they were still packing them in when they went over to Europe. So if you're going to Europe and you're packing the house and you've got a European title, then that title definitely means something because you're filling houses with it. So, it becomes at that point an item that if it's placed on the right person, it sells a lot of tickets.
No,
So
it
it's a big
does.
deal.
No, you're right. It is. 11,000 and some change in attendance for that show. That was at the NEC Arena, again in Birmingham. So now, at this point, now let me put this in perspective for you. On Saturday night in Birmingham, England, okay, Bret Hart defends his WWE Championship against The Undertaker. And this is where we're at, Q. And this is mind blowing because I really didn't pay much attention to dates and times and when things had occurred in the WWE back then. But it would only be 2 days later, which is what we're covering today. On Monday, the 22nd, prior to Raw, that Vince McMahon would talk to Bret and tell him, I can't honor your contract. Now,
Right.
imagine if 48 hours prior he'd have said, Bret, I can't honor your contract. We're going to take the belt off you and put it on The Undertaker before we get too many plans in the works. Just saying. But imagine the 48-hour window there where he could have let Bret know and they could have started to work this in already.
Yeah, there's a lot of different angles they could have taken on that. And a guy like Bret, who's a hardcore loyalist, I think at that time would have agreed to drop the belt to the Undertaker. He would have dropped it to somebody. Bret reminded me a lot of Lou Thesz. And Lou Thesz only put over guys that he respected as far as being a hooker or a shooter or guys that he liked. And there were a lot of guys like Abdullah the Butcher when he went into a program with Lou Thesz in Japan. He was afraid of going in there with him, and that's a fact. And he even admitted that. He was afraid going in there with Lou. And a lot of guys were. But, if Lou could make money with you and he liked you or respected you, you were fine. And Bret was the same way. If Bret liked you or he respected you, he would have dropped the belt to you in a suggested program, I guarantee it. But he didn't like Shawn, and he wasn't going to drop it to Shawn. And that was the bottom line. He just wasn't going to do it. And, I don't blame him for what went on and the comments that were made that were unnecessary. And I don't, I understand why he didn't want to do it. And I would think Vince understand it and have changed it up. They had weeks to work on it. It doesn't take a look. When you have the power, you can flip a guy to a heel in one show if you do it right, and you can flip a guy to a baby in one show if you do it right. The power of television is an amazing thing. So you can make things happen in one show that will make people love somebody they hated and hate somebody they loved. But they didn't do that. They didn't take that option.
And keep in mind, too, that just a few short weeks prior to this was Ground Zero, where Bret was in the ring with the Patriots. So it's not like Vince wouldn't have had a lot of time. When Vince says, well, we're in a critical place, you're in that critical place for more than a week. Do you know what I mean? Like, you didn't just fall there overnight. It takes time to get there. Food for thought. What
Yeah,
what do you
sure.
now? We're gonna go further into the story, but the main event to why we're here is Madison Square Garden, September 22nd, 1997. There just happened to be a bald man in the back, and his name wasn't Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's all I'm saying. I heard his name
There
was
was
Cueball Carmichael.
two of them. There was Jimmy Cicero too.
Oh,
The
great.
white guy Jimmy Cicero. So there was two extra bald guys in the back, and that was the night that changed the direction of the company, I believe.
Oh, no, you're right. And, that's the main reason we're here. But before we really get rolling, and I want to let the fans know where we're at in the business at this point. But what is the phone call? What is the, hey, Chris, we need you at Madison Square Garden. Take me back to where, okay, I'm going. The business is getting hot. You kind of already know it is. Austin's blooming. Michaels and Brett are blooming. So where are things at with you in 1997?
Well, Tom Brandy, who's probably the most loyal guy I've ever met, had worked for me at that point for about 2 years straight. He got the Salvatore Sincere gimmick and went up there, and he was in the ear of Tony Gurria, and he was in the ear of Arnold Skolin, and he was in the ear of Howard Finkel, and he was like, hey, let me bring a crew of my four guys in as enhancement talent for a while and see what you think. And so Tom is the guy that got us in there. Loyalists, they finally gave in and said, all right, Tom, you booked four guys. So he took me and Cicero. And I know there was a couple times Carino went with us. And there was a couple times, I'm trying to think of the fourth guy. I'm not sure if it was Julio. I'm thinking it might be Julio De Niro back when he was hot stuff. Julio Sanchez. I think he went with us as the fourth guy, but I can't swear to it. But it was always me and Cicero, and it was Carino at first. And so when we were up there then, it was because of Tom getting us up there, of course. And then after that, Jim Cornette booked us on a regular basis. But I think that night it was Tom that got us up there.
Well, things are cool at that point. Now, we talked last week about how tempers were hot. Boys, they were whispering because you didn't want anyone thinking you're looking at Vince's shiner. Vince got hit. Oh, my God, look at him. Where are things at that point then? Because I'm imagining things are a lot more copacetic at that point. Maybe a little worried about money, but things are copacetic.
Yeah, there wasn't that tension in the air that you could cut with a knife. That was gone. I think everybody that was up there kind of knew that there was a good thing going on. The Rock was coming along good. Mick Foley. You had Stone Cold and things. Undertaker. He's really had things starting. You could almost feel things starting to turn around. The attitudes were different. Guys didn't look at you like they wanted to kill you. It was just a lot different. Not that much later.
Oh, you ain't kidding. We're going to take a break, but when we come back to you, I want to talk to you about some of the highlights, I guess, of the evening.
Okay.
And, of course, Nitro is going head-to-head. So we'll take a quick peek because, Q, something real big was going down on Nitro. And I'm not sure if you are aware of the timeline, but something real big happened on the same night. So let's take a quick break, and we're going to cover that when we come back.
So far, so good. Okay.
All right, we're back here on Turnbuckles, Trunks, and Titles. I am Nick, joined alongside my brother Q. It's getting dark where you're at, Q, but don't worry, it's already dark here. Are you okay? Now,
It's dark here.
lots of meat on the bone on this one. Uh, the rating for that night was sitting at a 2.4. So the WWE still, they're sucking wind. They're trying to catch
Yeah.
up. Nitro's drawn
Yeah.
a 3.7. You got Bret Hart as the WWE champion, but you got Hollywood Hulk Hogan as the WCW champion on the other program. And one of the big things that happened that night that not a lot of people are aware about, but that just happens to be the night that Bill Goldberg debuted on Nitro.
Interesting. Was that against Hugh Morris?
That was against Hugh Morris. And I love
I
Hugh.
remember that.
You know, some people
Yeah.
give him a bad rap. I've always thought he was a very nice guy. Had a few conversations with him. But
Bill's a good dude.
what a great guy. Bill DeMont, of all people, to help Bill get there, because God knows Bill was greener than grass, and he had a lot to learn.
Well, he did, and the fact is that Hugh Morris at the time was doing very athletic, doing moving stuff off the top rope. So for him to step up and say, "Look, man, I'll do the favor for Goldberg for tonight, so we can get some ratings." That's a team player right there, brother.
Yeah, 3.7. So yeah, you're right. That is. And over on Monday Night Raw, we're drawing a 2.4. But do you think Vince is gasping in the wind when he tells Dude Love Mick Foley, "Hey, I want you to do the Cactus Jack here tonight in Madison Square Garden, New York City"? Or do you think that was a strategic plan, that was always going to be the deal after he fought and lost to Triple H just 2 nights prior at one night only?
Yeah, I think that was a strategic plan. I think that might have been a short-term strategic plan, like in the fact that they didn't plan that weeks and weeks in advance. But Mick was in their ear. Mick wanted to do Cactus Jack. It was the character with. It was the crazy character that he had for years and worked on and worked his way up. And so Mick was constantly in their ear about, "Hey, let me do Cactus Jack, even if it's only for a short period of time. Please, let me do it. Let me do it." And finally, Vince gave in. And Mick is one of the nicest guys that ever walked the face of the earth.
Sweetheart.
And so when Mick gets in your ear, he gets in your ear very politely and very nicely, but he's also a very persistent person. And I think he just really wanted to do it. And I think things were not looking great. And I think Vince decided that, hey, you know what? Let's throw some on the wall and see if it sticks. So go ahead and do it.
What are the feelers out back at Madison Square Garden? You hear guys talk about the world's most famous arena, and that's not taking anything away from some great arenas that, we've heard the boys talk about, whether it was the Sportatorium, the Spectrum, whether it was Philadelphia, whether it was, really anywhere. But they always,
Well,
what was different about Madison Square Garden?
Well, I can say New York that all the good wrestling that we saw came from Madison Square Garden, and they would always brag how they not only sold out Madison Square Garden, but what people don't know is attached to Madison Square Garden is something called the Felt Forum, and the Felt Forum holds an additional 5,000 people to watch the event on closed circuit television. So they would sell out the Garden, but they would sell out the Felt Forum too. So being a kid and watching people coming, with the shows that were on WPX Channel 11 out of New York, WOR TV Channel 9. We got those in upstate, and that's what wrestling came on. And they would always have big matches with, Ivan Koloff and Bruno Sammartino and Bob Backlund from Madison Square Garden. So Madison Square Garden is a legendary place. It's definitely one of those places as a wrestler and as a kid. And when I started wrestling, the thing I said is, and a lot of people in the wrestling business, especially in the Tidewater area, refer to me as wrestling's Rocky. Because the only thing I ever wanted in my whole life was to have a chance to wrestle in Madison Square Garden. That's all I wanted. I never saw myself holding the WWF title or the WWF title. I just saw myself getting a chance to wrestle in Madison Square Garden. That was my goal. I wanted to get in there and have a match. And, God, I just, it was one of those things that I prayed about. And I wanted to do it. When Tom booked us and said, hey, we're going to the Garden, it was like, yes, finally. After 14 and 15 years out on the independent, scratching away, I'm finally going to get a chance to be in Madison Square Garden and be in the back and maybe be on the show. So I was just incredibly excited. My dream as a 9-year-old kid who watched his mother screaming in the living room and came running wondering what was going on because she never did that before. I thought somebody might have broken the house. She calls for my dad. He runs in. I run in. There's a match from Madison Square Garden. A guy, Freddie Blasie's wrestled somebody. That's how long ago it was. He jabbed something in his head. He's bleeding. And my mother's telling my dad to do something about it. And I'm just watching my mother's reactions and how emotional she got. And to me, I got this tingle in my stomach. And it wouldn't have mattered if it was roller derby or underwater Himalayan folk dancing or wrestling. I wanted to be able to get that kind of emotion out of people. So that was the day I decided to be a wrestler, and that was a show that was coming taped, obviously, but from Madison Square Garden. So it was the mecca for me growing up, and that was my only dream and only goal was to have a chance to be in the Garden. So I got that chance that night, and that was a night that changed everything, in my opinion.
What was the atmosphere like backstage? I mean, I can only imagine you're setting up for the one of the most iconic moments in the history of the business that we still talk about to this day. So, what is the atmosphere backstage for that?
The atmosphere backstage was upbeat. It was everybody was excited. I heard it secondhand from one of the guys saying, "Hey man, you got to watch the monitor and see what's going to happen. It's going to be great." He didn't tell me, but I'm watching it, and a lot of the boys were told to watch it, but we really didn't know. A lot of us didn't really know what was supposed to happen or going to happen that night. So you're watching it, and when what we're going to talk about happened, it was just enormous roar, not just in the back, because the guys in the back popped big, but the crowd was louder than the pyrotechnics that started the show with, which I never thought was possible. I never thought I'd see a pop again like that. It was similar to when he was Dusty against JJ and Blanchard, and Nikita hesitated a little bit at the cage, and he went in and started lighting them up, and people popped like crazy. It was a popper around the world. Where this one was in that category.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see. I got to take a quick break, Q. When we come back, we're going to talk more about Madison Square Garden, September 22nd, 97. So you hang tight, and we'll be right back. All right, we are back here on Turnbuckles, Trunks, and Titles. Now, we're discussing all things Madison Square Garden. If y'all want to go to the WWE Network, if you have it, and it's under Raw, and it was the 226th episode of Monday Night Raw. We're not sponsored by the WWE, although if they choose to, we're always available. Just saying.
True story.
True story. Q. We talked a bit about Cactus Jack's return. Something else that happened that night. I had a hard time getting into this storyline. More so now because I don't find it ages well. But Brian Pillman had Marlena with him. And obviously he was having his feud with Dustin, who was in real life Marlena's husband. But she had prior been with Brian Pillman, and there was a lot of uproar, and some people just weren't having it. What are your feelings on a wife working with, like, what's your feelings on real life situations being brought into the fold? Are you for that or against it?
Look, it's wrestling. If you can use anything to put asses in seats, you do it. It's just a business decision at that point. It's nothing more, nothing less.
Okay, that's
all.
fair. That's a fair comment. Okay then. Great job. Way to answer long term.
There's an old saying in wrestling: nothing's sacred.
This is true. This is true. This is true.
It is, unfortunately.
Who are you seeing backstage around this time? Who's backstage that you may have a conversation with?
I might talk to any of the hearts that are there. That would probably be my main subject of conversation. I would talk with the guys that I went up with. At that point, early on, when we would sit and eat at they always had a great buffet backstage. Vince did a great job catering everything. And we would sit down, and oftentimes a young Stephanie and a young Shane would set because they didn't want to set with the superstars and feel like they were pushing themselves on them. So a lot of times they sat with us. I'm not sure if the Bangers were up there yet or not.
The Headbangers?
Yeah.
They're tag team champions.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we would hang with them because obviously they'd come up to Smoky Mountain, but they worked for my promotion straight out of Smoky Mountain. So we would hang out with them. That was always fun. They were always obnoxious, but great guys.
Yeah, Glenn's a nice guy.
And they had a podcast I did with them. They used to have on their podcast when they were doing it. They would have Cueball's Corner Pocket, and they'd read some of my stuff that I posted on their podcast. So they gave me a lot of time on their podcast. They're buddies of mine, and I love both of them. And they were up there. I think Dudley's were up there. Matt and Jeff were always in and out at that point. So, a lot of guys that hung around together before are now up there. So it's a good feeling. I think everybody felt the change. I think you could feel the momentum was going to change with what was going to happen, and it did. And I was up there when it happened, and when it started to happen, it was the most amazing feeling because the whole attitude in the locker room changed. Nobody looked at anybody like they were competition anymore. Nobody, looked at the other person like they were there to take their job. So it was a lot better environment, and I think we could feel the shift was coming. I think we could feel that WCW was probably going to do some pretty stupid things. And, I think that everybody at WWE was feeling it coming. Luna Vachon was there. She would always talk to me. And, it was just a really fun, good environment at that point. Much better than it had been shortly before that.
Yeah, and let's just think. I mean, at this point, we're only a few months removed from seeing Tyson and Austin. We're a few months away from Shawn and Tyson at WrestleMania 14. We're just a few months away from Austin winning the Rumble. So when you talk about, I think Kevin Sullivan said it best the night that Tyson showed up on Raw, and the old saying was Kevin Sullivan went to Kevin Nash and said, "Did you feel that?" And he said, "Feel what?" And he said, "The Titanic just hit the iceberg. We're going down."
Yep.
And he was right, though. I mean, man, Sullivan is a smart man. He knew when enough was enough.
I don't think anybody knows the business better than him as a booker, as a wrestler, as an overall brain for the business. I don't think there's anybody that knows it any better. There may be guys that know it equally, but I don't think anybody knows the business better than Kevin Sullivan.
No, I don't either. I really don't. Hey, listen, I want to fire off a couple random questions to you.
Sure.
We're just going to kind of go off topic a little bit, little sidebar, a little something different for the fans. I didn't talk to you prior about this. I really wasn't sure if I was even going to do this, but there are a few things out there that I do kind of want your opinion on. First things first, last night, night before, SummerSlam, the new Thunderdome. First, I want to know what your thoughts are on the Thunderdome before anything. Have you seen it yet? And when you're ready. Not a moment too soon. Even though your eyes crunched up. You got this, Q. I believe in you. Oh, you're back. I was worried sick.
I'm sorry. I might watch the highlights. Yeah, I live out in the middle of nowhere. In case anybody hasn't figured that out.
No, I just want to know, so you haven't seen the Thunderdome yet?
I haven't seen the Thunderdome yet, no.
Okay, real quick. David Benoit. I read an article today that he was quoted in saying that WWE, he believes, will put his father in the Hall of Fame down the road. What do you take away from that?
That's a tough one, man. That's a tough one.
I don't see it, but I want your opinion.
I don't see it. I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening before I die.
No, I don't see it before I die.
Maybe in 50 years, but I don't think anytime soon. No.
Sunday night.
What you have to do is you have to put somebody in there based on the totality of their life, not just the totality of the circumstances of their life, not just their wrestling, but their life. So that leaves him out.
I think so too. I'm with you 110%. I don't ever foresee him going in the Hall of Fame.
No.
One thing I want you to watch, and if I could tell anyone to watch anything, it would be Dominic Mysterio's first match against Seth Rollins on Sunday night. Great match. Stellar. The kid really, he's going to come into his own. I think he's going to be a big star. I really do. I think he might be that shiny star that Vince is looking for. He was that good.
Who was it?
Dominic Mysterio.
Really?
Yeah, really good match. And then teamed up with his father last night on Raw.
That's fantastic news.
Just like I said, there were just a couple questions I want your take on. I wasn't looking to do a whole entire show on that. A few things I did want to know what you thought. What I want to do, if you're down for it, is just take a little peek what else was going on WCW. Because at the time, they are legit kicking the WWE's butt. I mean, there's no way around it. Kurt Hennig, at that time, is their U.S. championship. How much did Vince lose on that deal? Is that a guy you would have kept around?
I would have kept Kurt around, yeah. I would have kept Kurt around, but I would have probably changed some things about him at that point. But I would have kept him around, absolutely.
Yeah, I think
I would have used him completely different.
Here's two guys I want to know what your thoughts are. Alex Wright, who was the TV champion, and Disco Inferno.
Still a friend of mine. still message back and forth from Germany.
He was a cool cat. He had a different look.
He had a different look. He knew how to work it. He knew how to use it, and it worked for him. So that's everything that you want to have in a gimmick to be different enough and to make it work for you, and just be weird enough to get people's attention. He had it. That was it.
Hey, here's a cool angle. They call it one of the greatest matches of all time. You think about where we're at. We're in September of '97, and we're on a collision course heading right for Halloween Havoc, where the famous Mask versus the Championship between Rey Mysterio, who we were just talking about, and Eddie Guerrero is going to put his Cruiserweight Championship on the line. At this point in September, Eddie's champion. You got any takeaways from that match? I mean, I still call it one of the greatest matches I ever seen.
I had lost reception during that entire conversation. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to repeat it. I seriously, I could hear anything. I wasn't sure if I was still on the line with you.
Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio. That's where we're headed at this point. We're heading to Halloween Havoc '97. Mask versus the Championship. You got anything to take away from that?
Got again. Yeah, great. Great match. Just great wrestling. Just incredible.
Yeah, it was. Like I said, to me, there wasn't a whole lot going on for Nitro. They scored a 3.7 rating. They were in Salt Lake City. They beat Raw by a good margin, who finished with a 2.4. At this point, like I say, the Headbangers of the Tag Championships, if you remember, we were just coming off of Austin getting dropped on his head by Owen. So the IC strap was vacant, and we actually were having a tournament. And on that night, the reason I brought Pillman up was he was fighting Owen, which Goldust came down and punched Owen in the face, or punched Owen in the face, so Pillman would be disqualified. So, I mean, cheesy just to get to the next part of that story, but...
Yeah, it was cheesy. It went over like a lead balloon.
What'd you think of the stunner? How'd you think Vince sold that stunner?
As good as Vince could at the time.
First real move in professional wrestling for him.
Yeah, exactly. And well calculated, and obviously it worked. That was the turning of the tide moment for me. That was the moment that I knew that with the other guys that were surrounding us in the locker room and the talent and the direction in which they were going with Austin, I knew at that point that it was going to change, that it wasn't going to be long before WWF was back on top of WCW. You could just feel it coming. And then from that moment on, you could just feel the changing of the guard, so to speak.
No, and you're right. I mean, at that point, September '97, I mean, everything would start changing in January and February and March, and then after April, I mean, we were off to the races. I mean, there was no stopping the WWE.
Well, they had a great locker room, too. They had great guys. Excellent talent. They started to use it properly, and the rest is history, as they say.
The rest was history, as they say. Good call. Of course, as we know, Stone Cold Steve Austin would go on to be a Hall of Famer, and rightfully so, winning numerous WWE championships, Royal Rumbles, Tag Team Champions, Intercontinental Champion. He had a great run. And, with all thanks to Vince McMahon, because, I still consider that to be one of the greatest rivalries of all time. Where would you place that rivalry, the McMahon and Austin, in your top 10, top 20? Where are you at?
Oh no, it's in my top 10 because you got to understand what that represented. That represented the working man, the guy out there busting his ass, getting a chance to put the screws to his boss. So what happened is everybody that drank beer on the weekend, everybody that enjoyed NASCAR, everybody that went deer hunting, everybody that loved Steve Austin finally got to see him fix the boss the right way. No verbal stuff, a stunner, boom, and the pop was so loud. I mean, they kick off the show with pyrotechnics, and it's pretty loud in the back. If you're not ready for it, it'll scare the living daylights out of you. So, they go off with the pyrotechnics when they start the show, and then we go to the angled with Austin and McMahon, and out of nowhere he hits the stunner on McMahon. The pop is enormous, both out in the audience and with the boys in the back, because the timing was just perfect. It was one of those things where it had to happen at a certain moment in time so that it would ingrain itself in wrestling history. And that's exactly what happened. It happened at the perfect time. And timing's everything in wrestling. Whether you're wrestling another guy, if you have bad timing or he does, it sucks. If your timing with an angle sucks, it doesn't go over. If your timing with just, doing that stunner at absolutely precisely the right second, it doesn't go over. So everything was done at, give it to me type thing. Austin has been around a long time, was a smart guy, been around some great minds in the business, and bam, he hits the stunner at the right second in history, and it becomes history.
You're not kidding. It was definitely history. It's definitely in my top 10 as well. Hard to argue anyone having Austin McMahon in your top 10. I think it's it's the way to go. It was the light that would flicker and change the wrestling business forever. There's no way around it. Next week on this show, you had an idea. We're going to do 2 weeks of it. You want to tell everyone about it?
I forgot.
This is why I love Q, guys. I love his honesty. Some tag. What? Well, now you're skipping out on me.
It's a no reception zone.
Yeah, I know. I can tell. Now, what are we doing next weekend?
Tell the fans I'm in a really horrible spot for reception.
Well, it's okay. They can hear you. They know you're in a terrible spot for reception. We all love you for it. That's what we love.
Go ahead, fire it away. You worked on it, Nick. You go ahead, fire it away.
Okay, pal, I will. Tag team wrestling. We're going to do a 2-part series on some of the greatest tag team teams in the business, as well as moments, maybe things that they did that would change the business forever. There's a lot of great tag teams, whether we're talking Georgia Championship Wrestling or Mid-South or WWE or the NWA or WCW. I was actually showing my wife earlier a picture of Robert and Ricky and Robert.
And that's what we're going to do for the fans. We're going to break it down by the decade of the 80s first, and then we're going to go to the decade of the 90s. So next week, we want to hear from the fans on their favorite tag teams of the 80s. Don't go to the 90s. Stay in the 80s, because we're going to cover the 80s. Then we're going to roll into the 90s. But a lot of great were identified in history in the 80s, continued into the 90s, so we know that. But there were a lot of them that were created in the 90s that continued into the millennium. So we just want to cover tag teams that were created or dominated in the 80s. And then the following week, we'll do ones that were put together in the 90s, or maybe even achieved their greatest in the 90s, even though they were formed in the 80s. So we may be talking about a couple of the same tag teams next in 2 weeks that we talk about next week. But next week, we want to try to stick with 80s tag teams. And we'd like you guys listening on whatever format you're listening on, whether it's YouTube, uh, you find it there, and you can find Triple T Radio live on YouTube. You can leave your comments there. You can leave them here on Facebook. You can come back to the post and leave them. We'll check them. We get notifications. Nick's going to create something so we can do that. So if you guys want to go ahead and throw out some tag teams, we'd love to cover them next week with y'all.
And two really quick things as well I want to cover. Number one, on the corner pocket right now, those who are listening from the corner pocket, there is a poll up there. And it is basically you guys are going to get to pick the topic of our show. And if memory serves me correct, it's for September the 15th. And basically, you guys get to pick the topic, and Q and I are going to break it down. And also, if you guys want to name a favorite tag team from the 80s, send us an email. We're at info@tripletradio.com. That's info@tripletradio.com. Send over your tag teams and who you guys loved. And if you want, leave a little something on why you love them. And, Q and I'll get to that too next week. And if we don't, we'll get to it the week after. But preferably, leave us your 80s, and we'll get to that when we're on the show next week. Right, Q?
Absolutely. We'd love to have a little more interaction with y'all. I know it's tough if I'm doing it from the road and mobile because I can't see it, but what I do is I use my phone for the show, and I use my computer to try to answer comments during the show. Sometimes that's difficult for me to do two things at once, as anybody out there that knows me personally knows. Oh, I can't lace up my boots and have a conversation with somebody. So it's really hard for me to talk and do a show and answer your comments. But as everybody will notice that I do answer their comments after the show. I do answer their comments during the week if they had one. So I do try to get back to everybody that leaves a comment on the show. And it might not be right as the show is happening. I wish it would be. But again, I'm the guy that has trouble chewing bubblegum and walking at the same time. Let's be honest.
I love it, man. I love your honesty. I love everything about it.
It's true. Sadly, it is true.
So, what do you say we get out of here a couple minutes early? I'm going to play a little merchandise commercial, and you continue on driving safe.
Yeah, I've only got about 8 miles left. I'm almost home, so I appreciate everybody sticking with us. I know the mobile phone and the 2-hour, 2-minute trip I had to my last business meeting was a little bit longer than normal. So usually I'm home and stationary for the show. We had to do TruthBusters a couple weeks ago with me mobile, but it's important to me to do the show. I could drive with the dome light on down Interstate 40 and do a show for the fans that are listening. That's how much I appreciate you listening. And do us a favor, go over to YouTube. It's Triple T Radio, one word, space, live. Do it all in caps. It'll pop right up. And if you could, even if you don't have time to watch a video, could you go to TruthBusters or could you go to Triple T Radio and put a like? And please make sure you subscribe to it at the same time. And that way you can always go back there, rewatch the videos or catch up on them or make a comment. And we'd love to have a few more subscribers over there. And believe it or not, that helps us climb the YouTube ladder, just having subscribers and viewing hours. So, go subscribe right away, hit like, but make sure you watch the videos too, because we need the time. It really does help us out a lot. So we appreciate you all taking your time to listen. I know there's a million things you could be doing besides this, and we certainly appreciate all of you that tune in every week and rewatch it during the week. So thanks a lot, guys. We appreciate it.
Well, that's it. We're done. We're gone. We're going to come back here next week, and we're going to do the whole thing all over again, Q.
Sounds good, Nick. Have a great week, buddy.
You too, sir.
See you later.